Welcome and thank you all so much for being here. This is our third annual local election candidate forum. I'm Grace Wasson. I'm the president of Pause to the Polls. If you aren't familiar with us, we're a nonpartisan education initiative. We focus on connecting students and student issues with the issues happening in Springfield community as a whole, especially local government. We want to increase voter turnout and make these kinds of elections more accessible by bringing the information and candidates directly to you. And that's what this forum is all about. If you like what you see today and you're interested in joining us, talk to one of us, follow us on social media, or come by a meeting Thursdays, 4:30 in Strong Hall. You can also email us any voter-related questions you may have at pausetothe.missouri.state.edu. Before marking your ballot on April 8th, we hope you take the time to research your candidates well and look for nonpartisan sources of information. We know we can't cover every question tonight, but we produced our third annual local election voter guide. Hopefully you grabbed a copy on the way in. It's also available on our website and on the QR code on your program. You can access it that way. The program also has information about how to access additional information about the candidates. Please share these resources with all the folks who couldn't make it here tonight. We know, with that out of the way, we're here to get to know the two mayoral candidates, Mary Collette and Jeff Scragg, and the 6 city council candidates, Monica Horton, incumbent, for City Council Zone 1, for City Council Zone 4, Bruce Adib-Ziazi and Matt Simpson, incumbent, for General Seat A, Eric Polly and Heather Hardinger, incumbent, and for General Seat B, Craig Hosmer, incumbent. Jacob Wortham will briefly introduce our partnering organization for this forum. Thank you again.
Tonight's questions were developed primarily by Springfield's Neighborhood Advisory Council, or NAC. NAC comprises the 24 individual neighborhood associations registered with the city, whose combined geographic footprint includes well over half of Springfield residents. Neighborhood associations made up of community members living in each neighborhood, whether short-term, long-term, renter, or homeowner, no matter if they are workers, college students, or retired. Neighborhood associations exist to make our city safer, to make it cleaner and more friendly from neighbor to neighbor and block to block, up to the entire neighborhood. They help build community, engage, and support Springfield's residents. And NAC gives voice to all residents as it engages city council, staff, and other stakeholders in issues that matter to us all. You will gain a sense of some of these issues and concerns through the questions asked of these candidates. I'm an MSU student, a PAWS member, and an active member of the Roundtree Neighborhood Association. Find out which neighborhood association area you live in and explore how to become an engaged participant. See the map near the entrance or talk to one of the co-chairs or chairs of the NAC. I'd like to recognize these community leaders now, if they would please stand. Now, to those of you students in the audience, you may be wondering why you should care about any of this. As a student and member of a neighborhood association, I can tell you that it's extremely fulfilling, and it can provide you with a sense of community that can be hard to get anywhere else. It's also a great way to meet new people and have all sorts of social opportunities that are rather hard to come by these days. And it's great for networking. I highly recommend joining one.
Hello, and thank you for coming. I'm going to go over the rules really quickly. So the candidates will have 1.5 minutes to make an opening remark. For each question, the candidate will have 1 minute for their response. 15 seconds before the answer time elapses, a timekeeper will raise a pom-pom right over there. And when the time limit has been reached, a bell will sound. The order for each candidate has 1 minute each for closing remarks, and the order for answering questions has been determined randomly.
Not intended to be a debate, our format does not provide for rebuttals. This will allow us to cover for more questions. MSU developed the questions that will be used during this forum. None of the questions have been shared with any candidate, and no candidate was solicited for input on the questions that will be asked. There are many questions we have time to ask today, so we want to provide the candidates with the questions in case they choose to answer them on their social media platforms. The questions will appear on screen for the audience as they are asked. Because some questions are quite long, we have a printed copy of the questions the candidates can refer to as each question is asked. We ask that candidates do not look ahead to the next questions. We'll now begin the 1.5 minute session for opening remarks. Candidates will go down the line to make their opening remarks. And Mary, we will begin with you.
It sure has changed since I was in started back in 1970. I am a graduate for SNS and MSU, then MSU. I opened a business in 1978 after graduating. Moved the business to historic commercial street in 1980. I also have been very involved in my Mayoral, which is the Midtown Neighborhood Association, Springfield's first historic neighborhood association. I served on city council from 2001 to 2009, which is 200 council meetings and 400 council lunches. So I have spent a lot of time already in government. I feel like that's one of the strengths that I bring to my candidacy as mayor. I consider myself the neighborhood candidate. I want to, my goal is to give citizens much more voice in their neighborhood. I believe that our neighborhoods and our citizens are the most important capital we have in our city. Our human capital, I think, is the thing that makes us the strongest. And I look to find ways to connect our citizens better with government. Thank you.
Thanks. Depth of experience, succeeding streams, volunteering in different entities, makes me very qualified to be mayor of Springfield. Small business leaders. This is the best package, what we're trying to promote or communicate to folks. So that's why we're to serve as mayor. So just a moment to the other candidate in the race. That's going to be someone of the state throughout the nation of the candidates chose to city council from which is Springfield. City council since 2022, and it has been one of the best experiences of my life. I will say that it is a pleasure to be here because in Zone 1, there are some registered neighborhoods within Zone 1. The honor of circulating through just about all of those neighborhoods once a quarter. And so I had the opportunity to speak directly with the students who are here. One of our goals is well to be able to make this place where we want to stay and graduate and actually for City Council Zone 4. 35 years. Met my wife here in Springfield. She's a Springfield native, Joyce Eichen, and we got married in 1996. And so it's been quite a while. We've lived in Zone 1 since I moved in there. She bought the house in Zone 4. Sorry, she bought the house in 1990. I moved in 93, and so been around a long time. I'm an architect. I'm a real estate development professional, as well as a neighborhood association president. So I kind of get to see our city from all different angles. I feel like it's one of the things that we're currently missing on our city council skill sets, and one of the reasons I'm running for this position. I find really strong about development and growth in our neighborhoods. They're all important, and it's not one or the other. It's all.
I think all of those things make a great community. And I feel like that's one of the things that I really have a good strength in. And I've had this calling. I ran a couple of years ago and got really close and learned a lot. And I've come back for a second run here and feel like I've trained my entire career to be in this position to serve our city.
Your work hosting us today. My name is Matthew Simpson. I represent Zone 4, which is Springfield on City Council, and have been the Zone 4 councilman since 2018. It's also special to be Missouri State because it's the reason I'm here in Springfield. It brought my dad here as a first generation college student from Kansas and my mom here as a college student from Brazil. And they met and they stayed here. I grew up here in Springfield. I attended Missouri State, got my undergraduate here, moved off to Nashville, Tennessee to get my graduate degree at Vanderbilt, and then moved back here because this is where my wife and I wanted to start a family. During the time since we moved back here, we started a family. We got 10 kids who are working their way through SBS just like I did. We also was able to help start 5 Pound Apparel, which is a local small business downtown. So I got the experience of going through starting a business. And I work at Ozarks Technical Community College in Education and Workforce Development. My role is doing research to give information to our decision makers to guide the decisions we make to best serve our students, to best serve our communities, to put them on paths for a better future. And those are experiences that I bring to council. My belief is we make our best decisions when we make our decisions starting by looking at our shared goals and then careful consideration of the evidence on how to achieve them and with an eye on the future for our community.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone who put this forum together tonight. My name is Eric Pauley. I'm running for City Council General Seat A. Recently, when I was out canvassing, there was a young lady that I spoke to that had quite a number of questions. And one of the most interesting questions that she had asked during that process was how could someone of her age group become more involved in the city of Springfield and with city government? So I told her about my journey, which was I started many years ago as the president of the Phelps Neighborhood Association. I held that position for 6 years. After that, I've been appointed to the city's planning and zoning department, and I've been on that department for now 3 years. And I explained to her that it's very important when you become engaged with a community like that to listen to the stakeholders in the community. Take that information that you're learning during that process and bring that forward with you as you move into different things within the city itself. So I'll ask all of you tonight to listen very carefully to every one of the questions and answers that you hear and think about who it is that best represents you today in Springfield and where you want Springfield to be in the future. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm and I'm currently in General Seat A on City Council. I was elected in 2021, and in the last 4 years or so, I've had just a tremendous opportunity not only to meet a lot of amazing people through this work, but also to, work on issues that matter to many of us. So I'm grateful to be here. I've been in Springfield for about 20 years, and I've been so much with my family from Alaska to move to as well. So I love having the family around. I have 2 nieces. One is 14 and the other is 4. And, running for council, my motivation running for city council is to create a community that not only we can enjoy, but our kids can too. And so I want to make sure that we are investing in the future so our kids have a really fun, safe community to grow up in. So thank you so much for having me. And
Thank you for the invitation to be here. My name is Craig Hosmer. I've been city council since 2013. I guess right now I'm the longest serving council member there is. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But, I've been council for I guess 10 years. And before that, I served in the General Assembly representing Springfield and the Missouri House of Representatives for 12 years, where I was chairman of the Criminal Law Committee. So some of the issues that I work on and I care about are law enforcement issues in the city of Springfield. I to the University of Missouri in Cleveland, got my undergraduate degree in political science, and then went on to law school at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. And I got my law degree there in 1986. I've been practicing law here in Springfield since 1986. I love the legislature because I like dealing with policy and trying to do things that make things better for the city. I also like the city council because I think you do some of the same things. You make policy, but you also try to take care of constituents. You try to I represent the whole city of Springfield. In general, CB, I don't have an opinion this time, so if unless there's a writing cartoon character, I have a chance to be on the city council again. So I'm looking forward to questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your opening remarks. We're going to start with question 1. You'll have 1 minute to answer each of these questions. 60% of Springfield residents are renters, with 48% spending 30 to 50% of their income on housing alone, and 22% spending more than half. Meanwhile, Springfield has a deficit of nearly 9,000 affordable rentals, leaving many of our neighbors without stable housing. Cities nationwide use affordable housing trust funds to build and preserve affordable homes and provide rental assistance. Should Springfield establish an affordable housing trust fund? Or more broadly, what should City Council do to reduce this deficit in affordable rentals? I'm going to say the order of people answering now. It's random. Monica Horton will start, and then Bruce Adi Yazdi, Craig Hosmer, Eric Pauley, Jeff Schrog, Heather Hardinger, Mary Collette, and Matt Simpson.
So the short answer is yes, but the question is how are we paying for it? I did make this as a specific objective of a proposal that the City Council last January. And it was a part of the presentation of what I felt is that should be considered. I've been talking with the subject matter experts who, one of which has experience with as a city council member of San Diego, California, who actually established one in San Diego. And so I do believe that we have the expertise here in the city to help us to move towards that direction. So I do believe that with the passage of a comprehensive plan, that is something that we would know to be able to address housing shortage by allowing for it to be easier for folks to do.
Professional stress in other cities and other states. Company I work for does affordable housing projects across the country, and it's a critical part of lots of our finance plans. And so I would say it's a critical part of finance plans here in Springfield. What else can we do to reduce that deficit? The people that live here in Springfield, when we look at these particular statistics that you got on the screen, many of the folks who are the statistic brackets would qualify for moderate income housing. A lot of people think that's, quote, just for poor people, but there's a lot of people in our city that would qualify, and to have affordable state tax credit for housing here in Springfield, more of that would be great. And I think what we should do as a city, and as a city council member, I'm going to advocate in Jefferson City for more of those dollars to come here.
Next is Craig Hosmer.
No, I do think the problem with housing in the city of Springfield, one of the problems that we have is we have a lot of vacant lots in the city. We have a lot of vacant properties in the city that are built properties. The city just recently started more enforcement. I think if you do more enforcement on the front end, you're going to have those people turn some of those properties over to people that can renovate them. And another thing that we're doing, I think that's done pretty well, is the Restore SGF, which is looking at rehabilitating houses in the city of Springfield and putting those back into ownership. The statistic you heard just a minute ago, the question is 60% of the people in the city of Springfield rent which is about the opposite of where it should be. We should have 60% ownership, 40% rental. And so there are no things that we can do, but I think we have to be intentional about what we're trying to do and set policies that are geared toward having more.
That's 60-40 support is, as Councilman Carpenter pointed out, is the reverse of what it is nationwide. And we need to get back in sync with what the rest of the nation is doing as far as housing is concerned. As far as the housing trust fund, certainly I support it. I'm a big believer in home ownership. That's how you begin to go ahead and build your own personal wealth as well as generational wealth. I had an opportunity to talk to a gentleman a few months ago that had spent a number of years on the street. He was homeless and he was currently in a rental situation. And I asked him, I said, what's your end goal? Where do you want to be? And he said, I want to own my own home. And I said, why do you want to own your own home? He goes, it's mine. It becomes my property at that point. I can start building my wealth. And then at some point down the line, I'll be able to go ahead and transfer that on to my children so we can build that generational wealth.
Is it my turn? Jeff Schrag. Oh, sorry. There you go.
There you go. I don't know position to setting up one of the housing trust funds. Oftentimes the city is a vehicle for setting up, and then there are state, federal, grant, private dollars that can go to fund that. But the city has to be a vehicle for that. So that's something great to explore. There's also other programs like Restore SGF that I'm looking forward to see what they can do with our city. I continue to say that making it easier to get a building permit in the city of Springfield and making it easier to get a certificate of occupancy will help the cost and the time it takes, because time is money, in development and construction and building and rehabbing. And the city, I believe, can have is improve that efficiency.
Hello, now it's my turn. Thanks. So I definitely support the idea of an affordable housing trust fund for several reasons. One of the things that I think we need to talk about on city council is supporting incentives for individuals to purchase some of the vacant property that we have available and convert that into the best use. Not only assistance, as I see on the question, but also down payment assistance. So we do have organizations in the community that are doing that. Councilman Hosmer mentioned Restore SGF. That's one organization that is providing down payment assistance and also providing matching funds to renovate neighborhoods. So I think that there are a lot of different ideas that we should consider, but those are some that I think are interesting. Mary Collette?
I can tell you really smart people sitting up there, and throughout these candidate films, it's been really great to hear. Everybody has wonderful ideas, and they're a lot like the land bank. You didn't get a chance to mention that. I certainly support I think sensitive infill in the neighborhoods is incredibly important. And if the city can provide resources such as Restore SGF is already doing, that would be really important. I think neighborhoods are going to have, there's going to be increased density. And our new zoning ordinance, I think, is going to suggest directions we can take to create increased density, which is hopefully our single family housing. Last thing is, if we create condos and get some of these older folks who are in their homes into the condos, it puts those homes on the market for our young people, and we have to have incentives and low income loans perhaps for them as well.
I think housing to our city, and we need to look at every avenue we can do to tackle that problem, including the affordable housing trust funds, including existing programs that we have funded on council, like the Springfield Community Land Trust or Restore SGF, including taking advantage of the land bank legislation we were able to work to get passed in Jefferson City. And those are all important, but I think it's also important that we address the supply and demand imbalance. We just saw population growth in Springfield vastly exceed the addition of new houses, and that's created a situation where thousands hundreds of units short across different home types, across different home price points. And that drives up the prices for everyone, whether you're homeowners or whether you're renters. And we have to tackle that problem if we want to tackle housing in our community. And that includes making sure that we're allowing for the building of mixed use developments, of missing middle, of mixed income. But we've got to tackle that housing supply gap.
All right, thank you. Sorry. Question 2, so go ahead and flip to page 2. Safety, security, illegal activities, and noise are some of the questions that impact our neighborhoods. Time out balance. Law enforcement is critical to ensuring such issues do not get out of control. Effective enforcement helps foster civic engagement and neighborhood pride. With respect to quality of life in our neighborhoods, what areas of code and law enforcement do you feel need extra attention, if any? The order of this question, in terms of responses, is going to be starting off Matt Simpson, and then number 2, Mary Collette, number 3, Heather Hardinger, number 4, Jeff Schrog, number 5, Eric Pauly, number 6, Craig Hosmer, number 7, Bruce Edward Yadzi, and number 8, Monica Horton.
I'll start with the law enforcement question. I think our biggest priority there needs to continue to be to achieve full staffing. Law enforcement hiring has been a challenge across the country, not just in Springfield, but we need to deal with it here and find the solution here. We've taken steps towards that with the creation of a recruitment plan for police officers, with the rehire program to keep officers with expertise on the force longer, which is critical, as well as with retention programs. We used ARPA funds to create for our first responders. And we have a chance with the voter passage of the Springfield initiative last November that provides a $0.25 dedicated to permanent public safety, including recruitment and retention, to finish that job and to achieve full staffing police officers. So we have officers to respond when there is a need. On the code side, I think we continue looking and seeing how we can strengthen the code to act as a deterrent to bad behavior. The best code is one you don't have to use because it encourages proactive compliance by people.
I think we need to have a much stronger enforcement of our basic nuisance ordinances, identifying nuisance properties in neighborhoods that cause surrounding properties to decrease in value. I think is a huge problem, and we have largely ignored. I also think the rental home inspection program needs to be reinstituted. We used to have it. I think it's really, really important for neighborhoods to stabilize their housing stock. I also think that the neighborhood teams, which has been on hiatus, I guess due to staffing issues at the center, the neighborhood teams have been very instrumental in dealing with some of the issues in neighborhoods like weeds and trash and vehicles parked in the yards and things of that nature. So sometimes it's the little things that really can make a big difference in our neighborhoods.
Yes.
Look safe and choices where the word all traffic control those staff levels are below the desirable. So we're going to make sure that we are the point of choice so that we can keep people. It's more than just pay. There's other things that we can do, but that would be job one in my opinion. Secondly, again, I go back to make it easier to get a building permit to fix something up and have a certain occupancy and obstacles for people who want to improve property, either as an owner or someone who wants to buy it as an utility. I think it would also help us go a long way.
So I think the issue of full staffing is certainly something we've talked a lot about on council. And, we received a report from the chief of police that, we're doing a bit better in that area. So we have been recruiting more officers. Retaining officers is also important. So some of these other elements of quality of police apply not just to us as citizens, but to the police officers that we may be recruiting from other communities. So I think it's important that we, evaluate and reevaluate ways that we can continue to support and resource our police department and all of their, safety functions, health and fire department, et cetera. Making sure that they have the tools to do their job well, making sure that we're utilizing technology that's effective in preventing crime, I think is important to think about too.
Proud to be part of the mayor's commission that worked on the 3/4% sales tax, and all of you who voted to support that, the applause goes to you. Thank you for doing that. That will go ahead and help us get up to full staffing, as many have mentioned here this evening. The other thing too is that as a neighborhood president, I was also part of and led our neighborhood teams that had been mentioned before. And one of the issues that we continue to run into there is that although we had the code in place, it was enforcement. And I think that we really need to take a hard look at that level of enforcement to make sure that we continue to move away from being a complaint-driven type of system to a more action-driven type of system that we haven't seen in the past. I know that BDS is working toward that, but I think that we need to continue down that road.
Next. I would say we need to in better enforcement in all areas of the city. We are about 50 officers short in the city of Springfield, and I don't know, since I've been on council, I think we've been short of police officers for the city. So it's a chronic problem. We've done better with recruitment, we've done better with retention, but we still have problems getting enough police officers to work for the city of Springfield. And so we have police officers to do a lot of services that they really shouldn't be dealing with. They're social workers. They're trying to help with replacement. What we have is about 40% of police officer time in the city of Springfield is used with people that have drug or alcohol problems or mental health issues. And that's because those people are straight rather than in the facility or rather getting training they need. So it's something that I think it's a societal problem that we need to get smarter and deal with more people than just saying we need more police officers all the time.
So, have said a lot and try not to repeat much of it, but I really think this also boils down to strong neighborhoods. And I really, that's one of the themes of my campaign is I'm the association president of Samuel Holland neighborhood, and we're all working on a long range plan for our neighborhood. And I feel like help us understand as a neighborhood and grow and for development opportunities, but also it helps our neighborhood come closer together. It brings more people together. And I think when that happens, you're able to have a less crime rate in the neighborhood when it's a stronger neighborhood. You talk about some design opportunities within neighborhoods around your house. Just trying to find ways not to create places for people to hide, trimming the bushes back, making sure we've got good lighting. Those kinds of things are all important. So I'd encourage us to think about, the small things as well as the big stuff that's been talked about here.
So I live in White Beach neighborhood. So is essentially a police able representative. And that particular officer represents 3 neighborhoods. And I can foresee if we're doing these force very staffed, and a neighborhood can only have an officer instead of that being shared against shared neighborhoods. Such great infrastructure. Officer comes to the neighborhood association every single month, gives them the stats on what crime is looking like in their neighborhoods, and they get a chance to have Q&A with the police officer every single month. That police officer comes. And so for me, I noticed that folks are calling me regarding speeding, regarding empty vacant houses. And so enforcement on that side can benefit neighborhoods greatly because neighborhoods are doing great with people in touch with the officer.
Thank you. For question 3, safe, affordable transportation is integral to ensuring equal access to job opportunities and resources to Springfield residents. 15% of Springfield residents cannot access a personal automobile, and 21% of households live under the poverty line. And the problem of transportation was exacerbated last year when city utilities condensed the bus routes. If elected, what is your plan to improve transit so that all Springfield residents can thrive and contribute to their community? We'll start with Heather Hardinger, and 2, Mary Collette, 3, Matt Simpson, 4, Monica Horton, 5, Craig Hosmer, 6, Eric Pauley, 7, Jeff Schrag, and 8, Bruce Adi Yazdi.
So affordable transportation, I think, is certainly a hallmark for any community, but certainly for Springfield. I think ensuring that, you know, our folks have a safe and reliable way to get to work every day is important. I also think that, you know, reconsidering our bus routes, potentially, you know, maybe public-private partnerships to increase bus routes across the city, I think could be an idea that could be explored. You know, city utilities does operate our bus system, and I think that's one of the only, if not the only, system in the country that operates that way. And so I think that we have some opportunity to kind of explore a little bit what that looks like. But you know, I think that expanding access to public transit is something that is important for Springfield.
Next, we have Mary Collette.
Improving our public transit system is actually one of my key 3 points on my campaign. I visited with the folks at City Utilities, and they want the same thing as we do. Good, clean, affordable, fast, efficient transportation is one of the best tools to fight poverty. You can't get folks to the job center or workforce development center if they can't get on a bus and be there within a half an hour or so. I think it's going to take some creative thinking. I think it's going to take creative thinking by all of us as a group and working with other entities in the city. You look at what Airlines is doing. You look at what Uber and Lyft are doing. There are other communities that are doing various using smaller shuttles during the week and using more electric vehicles. I just think there are a lot of creative ways we can look at to improve our transportation system. And until we do, we can't really claim ourselves to be a model city.
Matt Simpson.
Transportation system is incredibly important. I see that every day at Ozarks Tech. We have a lot of students that rely on the bus system to get to and from classes, and we provide out a lot of bus passes funded by employee donations to those students. So it's important that we have a good network. The challenge with everything in Springfield is we've also grown out, not up. And for public transportation, the bigger an area you're having to cover and the less density, and we have a very big area and very low density, the harder it is to have an effective transit system because you're making trade-offs between how often the routes run and how far the routes can cover. And those both have advantages and disadvantages on either side of the balance. So the things we can do, like looking at micro transit solutions to supplement the main routes and making sure the main routes are as effective as possible and looking at other investments. But we also have to consider making sure there are areas of town where we have the density where people can live there, use transit effectively, walk to and from work in their home, and where they need to shop groceries or where they want to spend time.
So we've been responding to transit questions over the past 2 weeks, which was particularly interesting. Shelters, individuals, from and other types of elements, and we're just trying to verify that 2 shelters, one of the sure just sure that since something sure things that are commenting that we're talking about, some of the basic things in terms of some of the stressors that I know that's right now. Some of the things that typically address some of the to us utilities because
Cosmer.
I do think we have a problem with transportation, and I know that city utilities shows that concern. I think council, as well as city utilities, several times on. And one of the things that I think maybe we should look at is free transit for the city of Springfield. For anyone that citizens of the city of Springfield, you could ride the bus system free. City utilities chose not to go that route, which I understand. They're losing about $8 million every year on transit, but they are the only utility in the state of Missouri that provides transit services. And I think generally they do a great job. They do a great job providing electric utility services for the city of Springfield at a very cheap rate. But I think transit is it's a hard nut to crack. But I think one of the things that we can do smarter is build a city where everybody grocery stores within walking distance to people's homes. You know, we have a lot of food deserts in the city of Springfield where people have to buy their groceries at a convenience store, and we need to plan our cities better. Sorry.
Eric, Polly?
Well, so many good points brought up. Yes, this is something that we do need to address, and we do need to address not only for today, but for tomorrow as well. With our transportation system, obviously, we're a very auto-centric city here in the city of Springfield. 20 minutes to get from one side to the other in your car, 2 hours by bus. We need to take a look at those routes out there and see how can we go ahead and minimize that amount of time that it takes you to get from point A to point B if you don't want to go all the way across the city of Springfield. We could do that by looking at the larger buses being more of an arterial system and supplement that with some smaller buses in order to go ahead and take care of getting people to locations that are a little bit closer at that point.
Jeff Shrug?
So system, civil roads, that is a very important element of that is public transportation. A lot of the citizens would accept higher utility. It's to subsidize even more heavily the bus system or limited resources for transportation of user fees, fees from the operating entity, which is our utility rates. Federal grants, federal subsidies, you know, right now we're in a tough spot with things like that in the state of Missouri. But so the idea is that it will come forward and to start. You know, would it be more bus routes? Would it be better bus shelters? Would it be grid system? And those things are the biggest bang for the buck is where you need to start. My turn. And I think as Councilman Simpson mentioned, it's a situation that we actually need more demand. And to be able to operate a functional transit system. The crowd, which we all know incrementally every year, but strategically where that growth can happen and should happen in areas that we can create higher density and a better use of those kinds of infrastructure systems is really important. I also think about other forms of transportation. I mentioned walking to the store. Wouldn't that be great? It's the most efficient transportation we have. Bicycles are another one. I spent some time working with the city and city council to generate bike lanes and bike routes and other kinds of systems that we can use here in Springfield. We've got a flat city. It's another way to get around town without having to use a transit bus. So that's the things I have.
All right. Studies show that consolidated residential curbside trash pickup, whereby each geographic area is served by a single trash pickup service, saves fuel, reduces traffic congestion and noise, reduces street wear and tear, and can lower costs and allow for improved services. We think Springfield should have trash consolidation, as do the vast majority of similar-sized cities around the country. If so, what would we do to overcome the roadblocks experienced by previous attempts to consolidate trash pickup in Springfield? The order for this question, the first answer will be Mary Collette, Luke Tart and Monica Horton. Number 4 would be Eric Paul. Number 4 would be Jeff Shrug. Number 5 would be Matt Simpson. Number 6 would be Corey Hauser. 7 would be Heather Hayden. 7 would be Leslie.
Serving so the first. Triple is the first. The trash haulers, kind of like we've been talking about with developers, getting the trash haulers together, the major trash haulers. We have to start there based on what we experienced before. There was a lot of pushback, and the major trash haulers would basically put the smaller trash haulers out of business if we did like waste districts. I think it's really good. I know that we did something. We did a small program on Commercial Street where we had replaced about 30 or 40 dumpsters with 5, and it's worked out really well. I also think the curbside recycling, I saw there was an article about how much trash goes into our waste stream that should be recycled, and perhaps if we started with the curbside recycling, we could reduce the amount of waste. But I do think we have to get with the haulers and ask them to help craft some kind of sorry. So the results from the study that we heard this week on Tuesday was that 80% of folks really like their trash haulers. So it's kind of like, if you like them, how are we going to change the actual system? But it is one of those things where we do also know that not enough folks are recycling, and those who are, they're very, very pleased with either the service that they are receiving or being able to go to the recycle centers that we have that are existing. I do think that it should be revisited again in terms of the impacts to, of course, noise and folks not having their trash picked up on time, and sometimes, not having them to come at all in intermittent types of ways. But overall, I really do think that the way the process is going to happen anyway is that you have to give 2 years for the trash haulers to even make any change.
On Russell Tuesday, I was sitting on my front porch and I watched the number of trash haulers that came through. We had 7. There were 8 trucks, 7 haulers. One was the same hauler that their 2 trucks passed right by each other on my street in front of my house. The insanity of that many trucks coming through to take care of a small neighborhood that way just makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I think that we need to do a much better job of it. I think that we also need to take a look at our recycling and the way that we handle that here in the city of Springfield. Right now, the Mayoral landfill has reduced its age from approximately 100 years that we thought that we were going to have down to about 50 to 75 years. So we need to do a much better job with that. I think that we could take a look at cutting the city up into different quadrants and perhaps allowing some type of trash shows to take care of one area of it. And then maybe some of the smaller haulers could take care of the recycling at that point. There's ways to do it. We just need to look for them.
Is a huge plus in the future for recruiting folks, recruiting businesses to our community. I think is a very positive thing. It's a gem because we have it and other communities don't. The fact that the amount of trash that we're putting in there has doubled in the last 10 years, that everyone is going to go away. We know it. So we have different options, looking at maybe reducing to 3 choices that every person has, maybe set the rates, to encourage and perhaps require recycling for those things that can make a difference, cardboard, paper, metals, all those things would really help us. So, this was a big regret. Apparently came pretty close to a consolidated system, and I think we want to have the world to look at and stay on top of it. So
just come down the street 5 days a week. And the only benefit of that is my youngest really like seeing the trash trucks and seeing the trash men do their job. The downsides of that are additional wear and tear on our streets that we all have to pay for. We pay significantly higher rates for our trash pickup here than in other communities because it's less efficient. And we don't have services like included recycling, like yard waste pickup that we need. So, Monica mentioned the trick is, 80% of people really like their individual trash hauler. And I liken this to a phenomenon we study in political science, which is if you look at any congressional district, almost everybody hates Congress, but the majority of people in all those districts like their member of Congress. So the system is bad, but the trash hauler is not the bad one. I think there's a way to figure out a solution to this to create districts, protect local haulers, keep people happy with their provider while addressing the serious issues created by the current system that we have.
Well, I do think that we need to consolidate, especially, the communities that surround Springfield all pay about $10 per month less than the city of Springfield does. And they're offering those services. They get recycling, trash service, big item pickup, even some yard waste pickup. So we're services, and our trash haulers are actually making less for being more driving. Their biggest cost is their fuel and the wear and tear on their trucks. And if they have to go 15 miles to get 5, 10, 15 houses, that costs a lot more than getting every house on the block. And so I think if we can explain it the right way, I think it makes a lot of sense for trash haulers. It makes a lot of sense for the community to do it as well. So I think it's one of those things that the other issue is the landfill. We're building our landfill. That is an economic development because siting more landfills in Southwest Missouri, topography can be very difficult. And they say that maybe if we have to site a facility, it may be an hour away from Springfield. You think what the cost is going to do to transport that trash for 1 hour?
So this is a very complex, important issue for our city. The fact of the matter is that most cities and cities of Springfield have consolidated trash service. And I think something else to consider is that we're not serving our entire community because there are about 6% of people that don't receive any trash service at all. And so I think consolidated trash service can fix that. However, how we get there, I think it's going to require a lot of conversations, coming to the table and talking through what we're going to be able to implement. Something else I want to mention too is, recycling is not a requirement in Springfield. And so not everyone, I would say for most people, do not recycle. Another thing to consider, the city does have a composting program. A lot of people know about that. I started composting a couple of years ago, and I think the impact of just teaching people where the trash goes and why it matters is important, but this is certainly something that we need to get into.
I'll try to make it pretty short because a lot of the candidates here mentioned this, but I think the answer is yes, we need to do a consolidated plan. And how do we do it? We need to take a leadership position as a city, as our city manager, as our city mayor, as the council. We need to take a leadership position and say, this is what we want. And this is how we're going to try and get it done. We're going to get the right people to the table and have those conversations that are going to be hard conversations, not just with our constituents, but with the trash haulers as well. Also go back to the 70s. What was it? Reduce, reuse, recycle. Everybody in the city needs to be doing it. And it's just part of how we live now. So I think that's what we need to do.
Thank you. We will now move to question number 5. Springfield Community Focus Reports and a recent housing study indicate that deteriorating housing is a significant and growing challenge. This includes both rentals and owner-occupied dwellings, and no part of the city is immune. Some people point to housing improvement programs such as Restore SGF and Habitat for Humanity as effective solutions, but these focus only on a handful of neighborhoods. Others push for inspections of 60% of our housing stock, namely rental units. Still, others favor incentives to contractors, developers, and other small groups to focus on deteriorating areas. What would you advocate to put us on a path toward a more comprehensive approach to address deteriorating housing? We'll start with Craig Hosmer. 2, Matt Simpson. 3, Mary Collette. 4, Bruce Adiviasti. 5, Eric Pauley. 6, Jeff Schrog. 7, Monica Horton. 8, Heather Hardinger.
Well, I do support the legal inspection. I think the properties in the city of Springfield should be inspected, and most communities that surround us have legal inspection grant that I think would be helpful. I also believe we can go to says it's complaint driven. In a complaint driven systems, you only inspect these when there's a complaint provided by a neighbor. And sometimes that's difficult to do. I think what the government is, you get people to self-regulate, and self-regulate. Self-regulation is what you want. You want people to with some, but I would hope.
Yep, Matt Simpson.
The SIC approach to this. On the SIC side, we do want to make sure that enforcement is there. So investors who have large numbers of properties understand very clearly that because of our code, because of our enforcement, they need to make sure these problems don't occur. And that way we can not have to get to the point where we force them to be fixed because they won't occur in the first place. But on the carrot side, those enforcement, if you're talking about your neighbor who's a senior citizen on a fixed income and maybe runs into issues and can't address, has house issues that they can't pay for, handing them a ticket, adding fines to their budget that already isn't balancing, isn't going to fix the problem. It's going to make it worse for them as our neighbor, and it's not going to address the issue for our community. So I think we've got to keep our focus on this area. Our goal is not to push people. Our goal is to make sure that these problems don't happen. So we're not having to deal with these problems in our neighborhood. And we can do that through a combination of both enforcement, but also programs to help people who need it.
I think we'll talk about some returns for our neighborhoods to address those useless properties. To the city, so afraid they're going to be kicked out of their house. So if we have the teams in place, and the nuisance ordinance stronger, and then with primary enforcement, and the rules can actually identify, especially if they're in the process of creating a long strategic plan or an urban conservation district, they can identify the properties that they know will work. I can think of two block that desperately need work, and it would make a huge difference in the properties around them. So again, it's getting tools to our neighborhoods.
It's a complicated issue. We have lots of neighborhoods with different varieties of deteriorating housing and stock. As we all walk to neighborhoods and start knocking doors, you start to really notice the differences in some of them. But on the bright side, there are several organizations out there right now. I agree with the enforcement of the inspections and trying to make sure that our landlords keep their properties up to some reasonable code standards. But I also think we have to think outside the box on how we redevelop those houses. And there's a couple of organizations here in town, Drew's Foundation. You guys may have seen them in the news here recently. They're doing a nice project in Grant Beach neighborhood. And yes, it's just in Grant Beach right now, but that's the kind of thing that is expandable. And once the idea is there, once the model is there, it's something that can happen in just about every neighborhood.
I do support the whole idea of rental inspections. I think this is something that for the safety and security of the residents of Springfield, especially those, because we are at a 60% rental rate, that we need to take that into consideration. So this is something that's very important to me. Additionally, as has been mentioned before, we do have some very good groups here in Springfield. Restore SGF, Habitat for Humanity, the Drew Lewis Foundation. They're all doing their part in order to go ahead and better the different properties within the city of Springfield. Each one of the neighborhoods does have its own unique challenges. So I think as the city itself, a city council member, this is something that we need to go ahead and support these different organizations in order to do the work that they're doing, and looking for other organizations that could perhaps fill any type of gap to make sure that we're not leaving anything out there on the table, and make sure that we don't have overlap between all of them.
Jeff Schrag.
So I rental inspection. I just haven't seen the information or the study that shows that would solve the problem. That those worst landlords, how do you find them? Because they're clearly not in the system. They're not registering. They're not doing those things. So those are lots of questions in my mind about if it is the right path to go, it would actually solve the issue. But I remain convinced of that it would be. You go back to making it easier for people to get a building permit, to get a certificate of occupancy, as a way to address some of the hard patient issues that is renovating the existing.
Be Monica Horton next.
What did you say?
Monica Horton next. Sorry. So, on the City of Springfield's website, there is a section that talks about neighborhood computers. I was able to look at it. So that is part of my intent for sharing that City Council each year, and we also unanimously. So part of that is looking at, Simpson said, the carrots and the sticks. It's also looking at where the it's also looking at she also looked at its right to counsel. So approach is so necessary and was the original intent of that work last year. Heather Hardin next. Sorry, it's me. Great. So I chair the community involvement committee, and we've been working on developing an inspection pilot for the last several months, and I'm hopeful that we can bring a proposal to council within the next few weeks. But I do think it's important that we ensure that our housing stock is safe for folks to move into. We have folks that currently live in housing that is unsafe. But I think our inspection program is good, not only for tenants, but it's good for landlords too. I think most folks in Springfield want to be a good landlord, and so I think our inspection program helps hold everybody accountable for their part in that. The other piece of this, let's see. So in terms of deteriorating housing stock, I think prevention is really important. If we can get to some of those red zone homes before they kind of get slated for abandonment or become nuisance properties, I think we'll be well on our way to, ensuring that we can add additional housing to that stock. So I think an affordable housing trust fund would be a great place to use some of those funds to help with that. Thank you.
Okay, the question number 6. Expand public schools is an important consideration. As in 2023, 43% of public school students were learning at grade level. Efficiency, the number is only 38%. Traditionally, City Council and the school do not appear to collaborate to improve these statistics. We should recommend a hands-off approach for City Council, or should it work to build coalitions with private sector and community organizations to provide outcomes-based financial incentives to public school students and potentially to schools, teachers, and staff? For this question, we will be Sidney Glasgow. Second will be Monica Horton. Third will be Jeff Schrag. 4 will be Eric Pauly. 5 will be Matt Simpson. 6 will be Craig Osmond, 7 will be Larry Collette, and 8 will be Heather Hardinger.
Wow, that's and one in which I'm going to claim very little knowledge on how and when and how we can actually address that. Have not really looked into it, and not really knowledgeable about how those kinds of coordinations can work. One of the things I want to say though is that as I run for city council here, some of my strengths are different than policy related items. And one of the things I'd like to do is bring my skills to the table. But when it comes to policy related stuff like this, I'm going to look to some other council members who have better knowledge and better expertise in these areas. And once on council, I'll be looking to them and asking these kinds of questions for myself.
The way that I would answer this question is related to social development of education. So I know that students are doing taxes. Taxes that also the medical students and integration education. Just team just for inspirations. So there are some relationships which
a lot of opportunities, a lot of challenges that you want to stay in our lane. Absolutely. It's in which the schools are and building development services and streets and how the police interact with the schools, crosswalks, things like that. Absolutely, we should be prepared to partner with the school district, with Green County, and other public entities. Like the consultation on, could you imagine for the most school district in the state of Missouri? I'm really shocked how small of an increase in property taxes it would take to serve the best school district in the state of Missouri. I'm considering the largest school district and the best school district in the state of Missouri. This building out on economic development and attracting people. It's a flaw to our community. The cities are what it'll be fascinating as a community.
Off approach does make sense between SPS and the city council itself. That doesn't mean that there won't be communication, and there shouldn't be communication between the two entities. And I'll use as an example, currently sitting on the Planning and Zoning Commission, that came before us about 1.5 years ago with the possibility of changing the location of the middle school out to 65 and Chestnut. They didn't want to do that. And the information that came back from Planning and Zoning to the Springfield School Board was that it was a very bad idea for many different reasons, and we don't have enough time to go into all those reasons right now. But having said that, I do believe it is important that those communications and those lines of communication stay open. The idea of having the city help with some type of private sector education, I'm not a fan of that whatsoever. I think public school education is much more important, and it's our tax dollars. That's where I want to see the money go to.
Since we were in education, as our second last having past president of the Foundation for Springfield Public Schools Board, just to share a story from OTC. Part of my work, I identified that we have many students who face housing insecurity, food insecurity, other challenges in their personal lives, and that students are far less likely to succeed. Not because they can't succeed as students, but because if you don't know where your next meal is, where you're going to sleep that night, it's going to benefit from even the best education educational environment. That's where I see the city's role. I don't think we should dictate to our teachers how they teach. I think our role is making sure our students are growing up in an environment where they have their needs met and they can benefit from the educational experience. And that is where we can do something as a city and working with community partners, because we cannot be the best to Springfield unless we have every child growing up here the chance to be the best self.
Yeah, I think one of the things that so I don't think there's a hands-on approach on council with school district. I think we work together relatively well with infrastructure, with school policy, with informal school district needs that they come to city council and it's something we haven't done. I think there's good collaboration. One of the things that we did better at is ensuring in some school the schools are paying through taxes. 7% of the vehicles in the city of Springfield aren't registered, which means the tax. 60% of businesses that are licensed in the city of Springfield don't pay the tax. At the same time, 60% of the businesses not paying the property tax. 47% of the is not registered on the vehicles properly. That's one of the chunk of our schools, and I think that the city council has the ability to do something about it, and we should.
I'm serving some council for 8 years. I didn't serve the school board. It is a good idea just to touch base, perhaps once a year or something like that. But I also think there's an opportunity. Interested in as we locate older historic schools like Pipkin and like Boyd and up on Coleman Street that will serve a role for us to find services and nonprofits to go into those so that they either create neighborhood homes or, as Matt was talking about, some of the services that we need our kids need to grow up strong and educated for the future. We can play a role in to the school board and council. So I do think there's a role for us there, and I think I can hear everybody. So, I agree with some of what's been said. I don't think that we go over the hands-off approach to our public school system. We do collaborate on a lot of issues, and I think we should continue doing so. But education is it's a block of economic development, and so as Mike mentioned, ensuring that our students and families have the resources that they need to thrive so they can build their own school is super important. So, have conversations about that regularly. Recently, we just passed a resolution regarding food deserts to acknowledge the fact that, not every family in Springfield does have ready access to food. And what can we do about that? What's some innovative ideas and different things that we can bring to the table to kind of help alleviate some of those issues and make it easier for students to succeed and have the well-being to do so.
Right, thank you. We'll be moving on to question 7 now. What specific strategies should Springfield consider to create a more attractive environment so that skilled professionals and entrepreneurs will stay and grow their careers here? We'll start with Jeff Schrog, 2, Eric Pauley, 3, Matt Simpson, 4, Heather Hardiner, 5, Monica Horton, 6, Mary Collette, 7, Craig Hosmer, 8, Reese Adib Gusty.
So this is the Springfield and General Council, a from team that have sent access to the initiative that will go to really improve the city. That is really focused, and it's things the citizens want to explain the positive community for everyone. It's open for business that removes barriers from starting businesses, renewing business licenses, more property for businesses, expanding our businesses, and general concept of open for business. We want entrepreneurs, we want businesses to stay, businesses to grow right here in town with all across the country and the investment world for small businesses that start working and still in the community, large outside businesses.
Looking at itself to develop an economic hub in southwestern Missouri, and Springfield tend to be in the center of that hub. With the local communities around here, Willard, Fairgrove, Stratford, Rogersville. When you look at those areas, they have the potential for growth there with the land that we don't. But what we have here in Springfield is we'll have entertainment, we'll have medical, we'll have shopping. So it's kind of a symbiotic relationship at that point between the smaller communities and Springfield as being a much larger hub. Additionally, I think that we need to take a look at some of our areas within downtown. We don't have the buildings being occupied right now and make those available to different entrepreneurs that want to come in and use those buildings for their particular businesses.
As Jeff said, I think interest rate goes up for business is an important part of this. I know from my experience, kind of as helping start 5-Pound Apparel, there aren't enough inherent risks of starting a business. You're taking on a huge deal of personal risk, a huge deal of work and challenges to overcome to try to achieve your dream. And we shouldn't be layering on unnecessary challenges as a city or inconsistent enforcement that creates uncertainty for people looking where to start their business, because people do have choices also on where to start their business. So I think that's an important bit, as far as also attracting skilled professionals and to come live here and stay here. We want to make sure that we are continuing to invest in the quality of place amenities that make Springfield a desirable place to live. We made record investments in those trails and our parks, so we have the chance to do more with the Spring Forward initiative to do those things. But we also, going back to housing, need to make sure the young professionals have places to live near those amenities that meet the type of homes that they're looking for.
So this is a question attractive to so cultures. So since I've been seeing because it's one of those things where you have to have the time of meetings and events and things that attract the people here so that folks will to stay.
Heather, next. So I think to your point, Councilman Horton, making sure that we have the amenities that people want in Springfield is really important, especially when there's college students in the crowd. There are things that I'm sure you're looking at when you're considering whether you want to stay in Springfield or select a move to. I think it's also important to think about the professionals that come to Springfield because they love the community and think it's a great place to live, but many companies outside of the area. So I have some siblings that work for companies in New Jersey, New York City, Boston, but they chose Springfield as their home. And so making sure that can accommodate those individuals, I think, is also really important to supporting the economy. So co-working spaces used to be very, very popular prior to COVID. I'd love to see more of that, more innovative space like the E-Factory where folks can engage and talk with other professionals while they work for the companies that they work for.
Mary Collette is next.
I think that our culture and the arts, our heritage, it's always amazing to me how many talented musicians come off the Quad City Shout, which was arts, music, and performing arts and literature. I think we don't do a good enough job in cross-promoting the length and the breadth and the depth of the talent that we have in the community and connecting it. I think combined with like what's happening in Junior Creek, creating this central park for Springfield, and what's happening out in the at Springfield Lake. There's really beautiful projects coming along. I think if we can the things that Springfield, that our heritage, our position as a transportation hub, and the history as a railroad community, I think there are a lot of things we could do a lot more with.
Craig Hosmer next.
Well, I think Springfield has a lot of things to be excited about, and entrepreneurs should be happy to be in Springfield. I think we've got, with the art museum, the art museum is going to be, I think, a great project that they run in Jordan Creek. The Grand Avenue project, the Lakes Country Soccer, which is, and I think that's important because it's broad-based economic development. It's going to fill, hotel rooms, restaurants, retail. And I think that's the kind of economic development that I think makes a lot of sense because it helps every business in the city of Springfield. When you have good infrastructure and you bring people for tourism, I think it's a win-win situation for the city. So I think there's a lot of things to be excited about in the city, and I think for the entrepreneurs, the city of Springfield should look very attractive.
The great city like Springfield. And a lot of the things are an amazing environment. Sometimes when we stop and think and look at what we really have here, and I really think that's part of this conversation of how do we attract and retain skilled professionals. And I've read no skilled professionals to that conversation here, because that's who I want to be talking to. And that's what I've been trying to get focused on a couple of years ago. And what I've realized is that they really want that walkable, urban, oriented, places to eat and shop and go to without having to get in their car. I think that's really important. I also think we want to generate our own identity here. Ultimately, we want to generate an idea for Springfield. It's very genetic, and I thought if we could find ways to promote ourselves and become the Springfield instead of a Springfield, that's what I'd like to see. To conclude our question portion, we're now going to do the portion of closing remarks. In reverse order that opening remarks happen. So we will begin with Craig Hosmer, and we'll just go down the line here and end with Mary Collette. Candidates are limited to 1 minute for their closing remarks. So ahead.
Very, very brief. I'd like to thank you for the invitation to be here tonight, to have an opportunity to talk about some issues. And I'd also like to this on the stage tonight because I was term for office, and sometimes it's thankless to be on some council. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. This has been very fun to talk about the things that matter to you and to all of us as well. I love Springfield. I've really enjoyed my time here. I'm also just very honored to serve City Council's capacity.
Thank you everyone for showing up this evening and names for the questions that came up. It reminded me of a conversation I had not too long ago with a gentleman on his front porch that told me after we got finished with that conversation, he goes, "You're the only candidate that's come up and sat up on my front porch and asked me what I thought about Springfield." It's important to have that type of dialogue between all your elected officials and everybody within the city. This is something I'd like to continue with. So thank you all very much for having us here this evening.
As everyone has said, thank you all for having us here and for everyone who put work into this. I just want to share what I hope will be an encouraging story for people looking to get involved. When I joined council, I was the youngest member of council by a big margin. And one of my goals was to, at some point, not be the youngest member anymore. And I'm 39 now, and I've achieved that goal three times now with the new council members that are joined. So I'm now in the elder millennial category, I believe is the terminology. And I definitely feel the elder part of that. But my point with that is that everybody in our community has a chance to make this a better place for those around you and for the next generation. And if you find a way you want to contribute, even if you fill out a place, if you're going to be the youngest person there, if there's someone in the area you see, don't let that stop you. It won't always be easy. And there will be personal challenges you'll have to go through to do it. But doing the work to make our community a better place for everyone else is always worth it. And whoever you're voting for, please make sure you're voting on April 8th.
It's been a good section. Just a little bit. As opposed to thinking to go somewhere just to make something, right? Or to make it somewhere. And John says, make something on the line. That's what you're here. Why can't you do it now? Why have to move somewhere else? Why do you have to go to New York City or some other places? Now, there's some jobs that may have to do that, but think about what you can make here. So I'm speaking as someone just some things like that, and even just it's in that sort of thing. It makes my heart swell because I never did that. I was a mortgage. My family, so as a council member, it's really representing who choose to do. I've seen someone appreciate keeps me smart, keeps me going. I certainly should circle out the problem with the answers at all, the opportunity of the smarter. Nice thing about those photos, there's been lots of them. This is the last one, thank God. I was like, this is I learned something section. So it's just going on in Springfield teams the unfortunate things that we have. Let's talk about those a little bit. There's things that we can tackle. Start slowly move from there. So that makes we should also show up to the husband on the to serve with whatever coordination and all of that. But these are some fantastic folks. I'm also city council. Since 1980, she's strong area, we refer to as Mayoral, so kind of helping to further this stuff. As Jeff said, and as a community, yes, we just need to keep doing that and be all a Springfield we can be. Thank you, and not to overuse the word appreciate, but
I was going to express our appreciation from Pause to the Polls for all of the work that you guys have put in. I'm glad this is for your sake. This is your last event. And I hope you get a good night of sleep. But anyway, thanks for everything that you're doing and especially for making everybody so aware of your views. So through all these forums and also the voter guide, if you want to pick one up, please grab one and go out, grab a handful actually and give them to other people as well. And if there's any way we're, not too exhausted to just stick around after for a few minutes to chat with people, we might have a few more questions or at least want to meet you briefly, and that would be appreciated as well. So briefly, the Pause to the Poll students could stand quickly, a couple back here. Thank you guys. So it's incredible to see young people involved and serving as election judges and things like that. And the older people are like, oh wow, there's a young person there. And so these are the ones. And MSU's Office of Political Support, as always, stepping in at every stage. And it's been wonderful to work with the advisory council, and I really appreciate this partnership to enable us to do this event today. And that was it. Again, thanks very much for coming. Thanks all of you guys, and again to our candidates. Thanks.